You've got a big mission, a small team, and a role that's been open for weeks. Sound familiar? LinkedIn for Nonprofits gets it, and they are here to help. With up to 50% off hiring tools, you can find passionate people who believe in your cause. So whether it's a new program manager, a dedicated volunteer, or your next board member, LinkedIn helps you connect with the right people fast. So post jobs that reach mission-driven candidates, message them directly, and show what makes your nonprofit special with a career page on LinkedIn that tells your story. So if you're ready to build a team that's as committed as you are, head to LinkedIn for Nonprofits, click the link in the show notes, start hiring with heart and a discount. Visit nonprofit.linkedin.com/hire today, or visit the link in the show notes. In today's episode, I am joined by Katherine Lacefield, founder and head consultant of Just Because Consulting. Based out of Canada, she has done it all in the fundraising world: major gifts, peer-to-peer campaigns, grants, and my favorite topic, monthly giving. And here's where it gets really fun. She personally helped grow a monthly giving program from 0 to 2,000 donors in 5 years. And we are not talking about big agency budgets here. We are talking grassroots, face-to-face canvassing, fundraising, phone calls, emails. And she was out there canvassing in Canada herself. And every bit of this was done in-house. No third party. She hired the teams. She created the messaging. We're going to get into what messaging actually worked. Hint, it's called the 3 Ps, the creative ideas she tried, how she got the team inspired, the humor, the challenges. This is a honest, refreshing, and packed conversation with very useful takeaways. She also shares some smart advice for navigating the shifting grant landscape, especially for organizations looking at international funding, and how she really helps shift teams' mindsets when fundraising starts to feel more draining than energizing. Oh, and there's an incredible story about a BC animal shelter rethinking partnerships and storytelling that you don't want to miss.
When you're trying to push for change, you really need to show that a lot of people are backing us up and support us. When we're thinking about votes, when we're thinking about decision makers wanting to push people in a certain direction, or they want support from a large portion of people, we want to show that we have those people behind us. Those 2,000 people that are donating every single month to our cause, that shows commitment. That shows that they care a lot more. So by joining as a member, you're giving us the political power we need to show that this is not just crazy cat ladies that are supporting this organization. It's you.
Hey, Katherine.
Hello.
Okay. We are going to dive right into all the goodness here. I know you have worked across many, many, many different areas of fundraising in your career. We could talk about major gifts. We could talk about grants. We could talk about peer-to-peer. But right now, in this moment, what trends are you seeing right now? And I know you're based in Canada, so that may be more specific to the orgs that you're working with there. I'm curious to see how the differences are between the US and Canada with all the shenanigans going on in the world right now. It's the kindest way to put it. That you think that nonprofit leaders should really be paying close attention to. And again, you can be specific to what you're seeing in Canada, US, international.
So I actually work in many different countries while the majority of my clients are in Canada. I literally just posted something today that...
Oh, wait, I saw it's 8, right?
Yeah, 8 different countries. So it's pretty international, but definitely the majority are in Canada. And even if there's a lot of, as you say, shenanigans happening in the US, that does have an impact on Canadian organizations.
Oh, for sure.
But of course, a lot of the organizations that I work with that are on international scale. But I do feel that the granting landscape generally is shifting, of course, with what's happening in the US. Anything around international aid or government funding is very wonky. And in Canada as well, we're leading up to elections next week. So there are a lot of changes happening. And you can never really depend, in my opinion, on government grants in the very long term, because as soon as there's any political shifts, then that puts your funding at risk. So generally speaking,
that's right.
Even if we don't have an issue right now, putting all of your eggs in the same basket of government funding is just too risky. So you really need to diversify your revenue, even if it seems like everything's going well. You never know what's going to happen and suddenly budgets are cut. So I definitely feel that nonprofits are having to shift towards different forms of revenue. And I strongly believe, especially in certain sectors, that individual donations are still going to be much more stable in the long term than any form of grant.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you're bringing this up, even from the context of like an election cycle, even if nothing is necessarily like bad happening. It's just the nature of what can happen in a political landscape. I think that's really interesting. As far as individual gifts and the organizations that you're working with, are you seeing an increase? Obviously, we're going to talk about recurring giving, monthly giving, regular giving. How do you see that faring in the organizations that you work with?
So a lot of the organizations that I work with are a lot of startups or small organizations that are kind of getting into individual giving. We haven't noticed necessarily a decrease or increase. I would say because they're growing, they're slowly increasing because they're finally getting into doing the strategies that will increase their donations. I know that on a national level, the amount of donors, so the number of donors that are giving has been decreasing year after year, but the amount has not necessarily decreased as much. So it's just that there's less people giving, but they're giving more.
Yeah.
So that's what at least that's happening in Canada as of the last reports that I've read. Of course, there is huge economic upheaval happening in Canada, and I'm sure in the States as well.
Slightly.
Some slight changes. So I definitely think that has an impact, and people are saying like, oh, I just can't afford to do it as much. And so when people think of cutting somewhere, of course, sometimes donations are the first to go. Not necessarily for everyone, because there are organizations that are growing, that are increasing. So I just see it as you really need to double down on stewardship and really build a strong commitment relationship with your donors so that that isn't the first thing that they want to cut out. That you want to make sure that they feel so committed and loyal, like, no, I'm part of this as a community, that is not where I'm going to cut first. I'm going to cut into my weekly Starbucks, or I'm going to cut my Netflix account, which is probably better for my mental health anyway, before they cut your donation.
Yes, for sure. And you have a really cool case study to share with the listeners today. You helped an organization, I was a Canadian-based organization, grow a monthly giving program from 0 to 2,000 recurring donors over the course of 5 years. That is amazing. And everyone's like, how? Literally how? And that is exactly what the show is about, is explaining the how. Can you walk us through, I'm sure I will interject with a bazillion questions, but a few of like, what made that growth possible? And I want to actually start with the mindset that the organization had, that recurring giving was important to them. And then we can get into some more like the tactical.
Okay. So quick context, this was an animal rights grassroots organization. In Canada, we have different charitable statuses. So there's nonprofit and there's registered charity. Registered charity would be the equivalent of like 501c3, where you can get tax receipts, etc. But there is another status, I don't know what the equivalent would be in the US, which is just nonprofit, which is, it allows you to fundraise, it allows you to do everything, but you cannot emit tax receipts and you cannot apply for grants from foundations because you're not a recognized charitable organization. This was especially the case back in the day before the law changed, that for any advocacy-focused organizations, you were not allowed getting the 501c3 or registered charitable status because they didn't want charities that were going to be lobbying against the government to get benefits. That was kind of the mentality of it. If you spend more than 10% of your budget on advocacy, not allowed. So this was the context where you have to keep in mind that people were not able to get tax receipts for these gifts, which makes it even more impressive that we were able to grow to 2,000, in my opinion. So that was the kind of context. And advocacy is all about long-term. Yeah, go ahead.
Although I would say with that level, as I'm thinking about this, I actually don't care about tax receipts.
Me neither.
At the level monthly, because it doesn't really do anything unless you are contributing like large sums that it can make. So I don't know, this would be like an interesting poll, like to monthly donors, if you're giving that like traditional range of like 25, 50, 100, if that really matters to you, like the tax benefit credit, or if you're literally just doing it because you believe in the cause. So listener, interesting question.
Completely agree. And from a report perspective, they have seen, at least in Canada, the research that I've seen is that it's not one of the top motivations that people say. But on the other hand, something in Canada, because we have those two different statuses, people have this expectation that they'll get a tax credit receipt, So when they don't, they get this feeling of like, are you not a legit organization? So it affects the credibility of the organization more than anything. So that was kind of the difficult point around tax receipts.
Okay. We have the same. We have like, I think it's a C4, which is about like more advocacy based. So there are kind of similarities of different like categories of organization. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the context. And as an organization that was focusing on advocacy, as anyone knows that works in there, these are long-term projects that will require years to see any change. When you're lobbying against changing the laws to stop puppy mills, or to lobby the government to stop, or even municipalities to stop using horse-drawn carriages as tourist attractions, those kinds of things tend to take time because you have to do the education, you have to do the awareness, and you have to build up a campaign. So at first, they were really keen on building up these teams of fundraisers that would be on the streets, that would be spreading awareness, getting people to sign petitions, and just collecting one-time gifts. But first of all, that's exhausting and very expensive to have people out there every day collecting cash that you constantly have to keep on going.
Yeah.
And especially the fact that these were often cash donations, they weren't necessarily filling out a form with their contact. So there wasn't that capacity.
There was no contact information.
No, this was 10 years ago. When now I don't think this would be as common. People don't generally do that because of transparency issues. It's kind of much more difficult and it would be frowned upon. But back then it wasn't as much of an issue. This was actually in 2012, 2013 when I started, and I left in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
So anyway, so that was the context. And when I started working there, I started having a conversation around, okay, so what are we doing to really build up our sustainability? We wanted to get a bigger office. We wanted to have full-time staff that would actually be able to invest in the campaigns. And like, well, we do have monthly giving. And I was like, how many do you have? Like 50? And I was like, okay. And what are you doing to like continue them? Nothing. Their names were in a spreadsheet, literally. They were not contacting them. They weren't calling them. They weren't sending them emails. They had no email newsletter, nothing. And as someone who, from a very young age, like I really loved fundraising and I understood that we needed to build relationships. I was like, okay, like I'm going to come in and I'm going to change this. So I started building up their donor management system, and I became the team leader because I was really good at getting people to sign up to monthly giving, but I was one of the only ones that was good. So we started really shifting our priorities of when we were talking with our street team to start really putting an emphasis on monthly giving and incentivizing them to do monthly giving. This was street teams. So if anyone's ever seen those people that are like, hi, do you have 2 minutes to talk about Greenpeace? Or like, Amnesty International, that was me for 5 years.
You were the one out there doing the canvassing?
I did canvassing for a year and a half. I became one of their top canvassers, and then I became team leader. So I was the one that would do the little pep talk in the morning. I have tons of funny stories of things we would do. It was absolutely crazy. And then I started becoming more the just fundraising manager, and I was just full-time building up the fundraising campaigns and managing their donors.
Okay, wait, quick pause. I have to ask, when you're doing canvassing, what worked? Hiring for a nonprofit isn't easy, especially when you're juggling a million other things. And that's where LinkedIn for Nonprofits comes in. It's built to help mission-driven teams like yours find great hires, connect with generous supporters, and share your story with a global audience. With free resources and exclusive discounts on LinkedIn's most powerful tools that help you find the right people, tools that connect you to donors ready to make a difference, and tools that give your mission more visibility in all the right places. Start tapping into LinkedIn's power for your organization today. Visit nonprofit.linkedin.com to see what's possible, or click the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to the show. Was there like something that you would say where it was like a tried and true, this got somebody to stop, this got somebody to give on a recurring basis that you can remember?
Yes. So first of all, for the how to get them to stop, that was just trying a whole bunch of different things because everyone would be motivated by different things. I did it with humor. Humor always works because people laugh. Like I would sometimes just do a yoga pose in the middle of the street and be like, hey, you want to talk about like animals? And they're like, what are you doing? And then they would just, it was just like a what? Of course, we used a petition. So the biggest thing to make people to stop at first was like, we have a petition against puppy mills. Like everyone's against puppy mills. Like you can't,
Right.
unless you're a psychopath, not want puppy mills to stop. So that was a great way to start a conversation. And we had these 10 steps of really starting to build interest in like, so do you have an animal? Okay, that's amazing. Build that in like personal connection.
Yeah.
And then explain like, do you know what puppy mills are? Okay, well, this is what they are. This is what they're doing. This is what we're trying to do. You can sign your petition here. And then we start just based on what their responses were, I'd be able to gauge their level of interest. If they don't seem like they care at all, they're just kind of looking away, not paying attention, I can tell that I'm either not doing a good job or they don't really care. And so depending, once you gauge the interest, once you see people that are like really enraptured, they're like super into it, they start sharing stories, that's when you know this is a potential for a monthly gift. So we would always pitch monthly giving first and really say like, we're an animal advocacy organization. We need people to support and to join us on a long-term basis to give us more political power because right now the government doesn't take us seriously. So by signing up as a monthly donor, not only are you supporting us long-term through a monthly gift, but you're also giving us that political power to actually lobby in your name to change these laws. Does this make sense to you? So instead of saying, are you interested? Or like, do you want to give? It was like, does this make sense? Generally, it makes sense to people. So like, okay. And then you go into understanding what are their like breaks of like, why would they say no? Because everyone is always like a bit like
objection.
And then you can start having a conversation about finding solutions to their objections. Like, I don't like the fact that it's automatic. And then you can go into the, well, everything else is like repair monthly bills. It makes it so much easier for you to sustain your giving to the organization when you don't have to think about it month after month. The fact that it's automatic, it actually lowers our fundraising costs, which means that more dollars can go to the organization. So you can really, once you kind of get that initial hook in of like, yeah, it makes sense, then you kind of have conversations around what would make sense for them.
Yes. Yes. So good. Okay. It's all about the like slight tweaks in the language. I love that.
It really is. It really is.
So
like
good.
Simple things can make such a difference. And we can talk about that in this about stewardship is the same thing. When you really focus on, we need people like you who believe that animals should not be kept in cramped cages and reproduce year after year after year. You're bringing them in right away. Like, we know that you share these beliefs with us. And this is why we want you and not that person on the side of the street.
How often were you doing that?
Every day. So we had teams, not me necessarily, but we had teams on the streets every single day. I think for a while we limited it to 5 days where we weren't doing Monday and Tuesday because it was just like less productive days. Like there was less people on the streets. And it's Monday. Everyone's in a bad mood, it seems. But yeah, so we were doing it every day, especially in the summer. We have to understand this was in Canada, in Montreal. In the winter, we were still doing it outside. So imagine in February, it was like my fingers and toes have trauma from being outside in the cold for 8 hours. It was not so fun. So our team definitely shrunk a lot as soon as it got cold. But you'd be surprised how people are still, like I still confirm monthly donors on the street. What we'd do is we'd be like, oh, let's go inside this like the metro entrance or like the subway entrance and just
oh my gosh, I'd be like, I'll give you some hot chocolate or some hot coffee if you become a monthly donor.
That would have been awesome. I wish I would have had a stand. I would have loved to be holding something hot the whole time. But yeah, it was obviously much more difficult. But yeah, so we had people on the streets pretty much every day.
Oh my gosh. For how long? Like every day for like over years? This 5-year period?
Yes, pretty much. Like, of course, depending on the size of our team, if we didn't have enough people to fill every day, we would usually go back down to 5 or 4. Okay. But generally speaking, this was like an ongoing thing. Like I said, winter is definitely slowed down.
And this was a small organization, you said?
Yeah. This is a very small organization. So let's go into the pay structure of this. Do you want to understand
I was just going to say, yes. How did you actually, because I think people think in their head, like canvassing face-to-face, expensive. Like there's no way I can afford what she's talking about. Okay. So how did this work? Okay. So full transparency, this was a commission-based structure. And I know, and I'm going to, like everyone in AFP is going to say, that's not ethical. And I do share some of that. But there was so much issues so that it made it so much more accessible to a small nonprofit. It was very incentivizing for the fundraisers. And we raised lots of money for the cause that we wouldn't have been able to had it been on a paid hour. And we've experimented. We had experimented with paid fixed, and it just unfortunately did not bring in the same results. And I'm going to make a little caveat here of from a retention perspective. And I've also worked with and seen teams that are paid on an hourly basis.
they have the same issues with performance when it's paid hourly because they have to be on very strict quotas. And so once you have that pressure of like, you need to get 3 monthly donors a day or you're going to be fired. Like I'm not saying it was that extreme, but you had to have a certain average of how much you were doing. And if you did not reach those, like, yes, you could lose your job. So even if it wasn't like you get paid more based on how much you're bringing in, you will lose your job. That's that same kind of stress and pressure that you might be putting onto donors to just be like, just sign up. And if you have to cancel in 2 months, just do it just to get your numbers up. So I think both situations could have their pros and cons in that perspective around donor pressure. So anyways, so because they were doing also one-time cash gifts as well as monthly gifts, and we had forms and we had POS machines to also take like credit card donations. I was really pushing people to fill out these forms because then we would be able to do the stewardship and follow up. By pushing for those as well, I ended up also building up a side database of one-time donors that we can then convert. We can talk about later. Anyways, so it was commission-based. So people were getting a percentage of all the donations they were collecting, but they would get bonuses when they were getting monthly gifts because that's what we really wanted.
Of course.
That's what we want because we want to eventually not necessarily need to have a full-time team on the street because that's a lot of management, the constant interviews, recruiting, training, like it was exhausting.
Okay, so it wasn't through like a third-party company?
No, we were doing it all in-house.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a lot
and I
of
was
work.
doing everything. Like I was doing the interviews, the trainings. We had trainings every week, plus the like performance reviews and blah, 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 and just keeping them motivated. It was absolutely exhausting, which is why I'm saying like, I don't necessarily recommend this model from that perspective. There's so many other ways you can acquire people. But what was awesome is that once we built up a strong database, we had to have less people on the streets and we shifted towards phone fundraising, which is a lot easier to manage and control, especially in Canadian winters.
Yes, for sure. I do think that this is a really interesting idea. I'm not sure all the laws or logistics in the United States, and there's lots of third-party companies that do this, but this more like grassroots idea. I actually have 2 questions for you. But one is a thought, something that I teach around recurring giving is to have tentpole campaign moments around asking for recurring giving. And then there's the evergreen, which it should be always all the time, but that there's like tentpole campaigns, like main focus, maybe 2 to 3 times a year, where literally you're just asking for a recurring gift for a specific reason. This is a great idea to have this element during that tentpole moment, especially if it's around a cultural moment. So we're recording this coming up on Mother's Day. So if you happen to be an organization that has something to do around moms or families or babies or something that could do with, or dog moms, like literally you could do the animal side too. Anything. And you're out canvassing around Mother's Day, like it doesn't have to be for a full year. Maybe it's just for literally like a month around some cultural moment that I could actually see working really well because people are already in the mindset of possibly giving a gift for their mom, to their grandma, to their wife, to their whoever, their daughter, like that I could see working. My second question was around, did you switch up your locations or were you like kind of tried and true in one spot that worked really well, like one grocery store? And like, how did that work when you're not a registered third-party entity? You guys had to like obviously research where you were allowed to do this, right?
So 2 answers. Number 1, to your first part, the difficulty I would see with that is getting staff to do it just for short periods and the training for them. And because it takes time to learn and to be good at canvassing. So it might make sense to do that if you do end up hiring people that are already trained. And that might be a great way of like acquiring for a short period of time, but it's much more expensive to do it that way.
It's like a naive question. Could you just have volunteers do it?
You could. Will it be effective? We had some people that were like, yeah, it's a very stressful and demanding job. And often volunteers are not going to have the necessary motivation and, in my opinion, incentivization to do it properly and push unless they're crazy people like me that love doing fundraising and that have the sales experience.
Like, I actually think it would be kind of, maybe I'm weird and I think it'd be fun. Like if I'm a monthly donor of the organization, be like, I'm one. Like I'm a monthly donor and I'm out here because I wanted to find more people to join this community, this amazing community that I'm a part of. Like, I think that would be an angle that could work. It's like, if you're ever looking for opportunities for your monthly donors and they're local to where you are, I don't know, maybe I'm just weird.
I mean, I think because we know how fundraising works and I feel we're comfortable with it, it changes the game. But how many people that are even fundraisers that are like, oh, I'm uncomfortable asking people for money?
Many listeners, I'm sure many of you are feeling this way. That would be like totally outside of your comfort zone. Totally
exactly.
Get that too.
I would go for people that have experience in sales because they're used to having that outgoing, approaching people to
and
bring
getting
in
told
money.
no many
and
times.
Being told
or
no,
ignored. Like, not even a no, ignored.
I've gotten spat on, Dana, like spat on and said, how dare you be out here defending animals when there are children dying in Syria because of the war? And I was like, what? Like, I don't not care. Anyways, yeah. So it's a very demanding job, which is why I'm saying like it could work like in an event. Let's say if you're having a specific event, like we had World Tofu Day at one point where we did this giant vegan barbecue in downtown Montreal, having volunteers that are out there. What I would use volunteers for is not to ask them directly to become monthly donors, but to get the contact information to then build an acquisition list that you can then transform by phone fundraising with a very small team of dedicated trained staff that can then convert them. So that's what I would have shifted more for a strategy of like, let's just either have a petition, have some form of lead magnet that you can say like, hey, sign up for this here, or we have a survey. And then you use those contact information to then have a dedicated team that will do the follow-up and fundraising.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about like growth. If you remember, so roughly 0 to like 2000.
Yeah.
Were there certain years or certain time periods where you really saw growth? And was all of that from, what was the split on like the face-to-face versus the phone fundraising, if you know that?
Yeah, I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know the generalities because I was the one that was managing the database. So I started more actively doing the fundraising. It was in 2013. And when they saw that I was amazing, the summer of 2013, I became the team leader. And this is not to like...
Yeah, girl, pat your back.
People loved working with me because I was encouraging, inspiring. We had fun. I'll give you a little tidbit of like what we would do sometimes on the streets. We would buy these funny little hats from the dollar store that were like made out of felt. And those like a bee one, a pig one, like ridiculous. And we made these little like game competitions where 2 or 3 people would be like selected as the first people to have to wear these hats. And then the only way to get the hat off was to get a donation. So we would be joking with people in the street, like, listen, I look absolutely ridiculous with this pig hat on. Like, can you help me out while you're also helping animals? It was hilarious. And you'd be like, okay, so who should we give it to next? Like, what about that guy? Yeah. It was so much fun. So I started implementing these kinds of games. Like whoever got the most donations before lunch, like would get like a Starbucks card or something. So we would have a lot of these fun games and incentives. I brought that to the team of like really making it fun. People respected me because I was also doing the work and getting good results. So I really shifted the focus to monthly donors. So that year, 2013, 2014, we got a lot of monthly donors because I was pushing for it.
Because you were making the ask.
I was making the ask and I was teaching them how, and just it became more of the culture of the team. And we changed the incentives on pushing really like, if you get more monthly donors and less one-time gifts, you'd still be getting more overall. So there would be extra bonuses if you got 3 monthly donors in a day. And I was like, it doesn't matter if they're for $10 or $30. Like, I want more monthly donors. The amount is not as important because I'd rather have 1,000 small monthly donors than 100 big ones, because if one of them leaves, it doesn't impact us as much. We're not as dependent.
Yeah, and then you always have the opportunity to ask them to upgrade or to increase later down the line, but at least they're in.
Exactly. That was the most important part. So that was, I would say, the initial like really big growth. And then when I started going more in the offices, doing stewardship, doing phone fundraising, this team, like monthly donors, definitely went down. But we had like more of a stability that it was integrated into it. The biggest thing that helped was when I started doing more of the follow-up calls and stewardship from a retention perspective, but from a growth perspective. So I was taking all of the forms, because this was all handwritten forms. It was amazing. And I was actually following up with people that were making these gifts to be like, hey, thank you so much for signing like this. And that's what started building up also. So I would say the phone fundraising, with pretty much me alone, I would say I converted at least 500 donors to join them
Wow.
monthly over those couple years, or getting them back on, or if when they filled it in the street, they switched numbers by accident because we
Yeah.
didn't have any verification processes on the street. So I was just making sure that anyone who gave their information, the majority of them were actually becoming monthly donors.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, this is huge. If you are still dreaming about building your monthly giving program or refreshing one that you have because it feels static and you're not getting a lot of attraction for new recurring supporters, applications are open for my summer monthly giving mastermind. It starts in July. You can go to positiveequation.com/mastermind. And there are 4 spots open. It is a done with you experience. You'll walk away with your program name, a completely built out for you landing page with copy, a launch strategy, emails, ads, a video, expert guidance all along the way, a creative team, and 4 amazing peers building right alongside you. We do this together. You can learn more, get all of the details, what we go through each month. It's my 5-step framework done essentially for you. Go to positiveequation.com/mastermind to join the summer group that starts in July. So what on a phone call, when you were on the street, I know you shared a little bit about the language, what messaging really worked for organizations that are listening and they're like, okay, maybe I can't do the face-to-face, but I could definitely do the phone. Like we have a good solid list of people. What was that and quick way of capturing people's attention and not having them hang up?
Well, first of all, you always go into the personal first. Like to get them to just have a conversation, it would be like thank you so much for signing our petition. Like I want to let you know like how many signatures we're at and what we've been doing. Most people are interested because we're not asking them for anything and we're sharing information. And then we start talking about campaigns, end up having conversations about like, so what motivated you to sign the petition? And I'll share you a funny story about Roger. So this is just like an individual story where I called him and I was like, hey, and he's like, yeah, my wife forced me to sign. I was like, oh my God, I love your wife. Like, should I talk to her instead? He's like, no, she's not here. I'm like, okay, well, thank you so much for having an amazing wife. And we started talking, we started joking around, and it led to a 30-minute conversation around the dairy industry because he worked in the dairy industry. He's like, oh, but you guys are like a vegan organization. Like, I can't really, like, I don't feel comfortable supporting you because I work in it. I was like, everyone is on the spectrum. Like you care about animal welfare, that works as well. We invite everyone to join the movement. And we ended up having just like an ethical discussion. He was like, you're right. Like the way they're treated. I'm like, yeah, but there's a lot of social pressure to like increase production. So really we ended up having a discussion before we talked about anything. And so this guy, Roger, like it took him 3 calls to become a monthly donor, but every time he would make a $50 gift. It's like, I love this conversation. Like, let's do this. And 3 calls later, he did convert to a monthly donor for I don't know how much, but that's not the point. So having those personal
he wasn't even the one that signed.
No. and every call I'd be like, so how's your wife? She's still forcing you to sign petitions? He's like, oh, all the time. Like, so we got to know each other. And that was useful of having one person in control of the list, is that I would have my little side notes of like, Roger, wife, signs petitions. Like I would be able to continue the conversation. So yes, it took time, but we were building the relationship, building the trust, building the confidence. So that was what was really helping, I would say, in the second half of those 5 years, where it was mostly about retention and converting all of those one-time donors or even petition signers into monthly gifts. Specifically for messaging, for monthly giving, we call this the 3 Ps of becoming a monthly donor. So it was number 1, it was around becoming proactive. So let's be honest, liking a post on Facebook, signing a petition is very passive in the sense of it doesn't have a very big impact. It gives you a feeling like, yeah, I'm supporting it. But realistically, that's not a very proactive action to push the cause forward. So by becoming a member, you're actually becoming proactive in your beliefs of wanting to change the situation for animals. So really putting people of like, you care because you signed this petition, like you should become proactive much more than just signing a petition. So those are the number 1. Number 2 was long-term projects, especially for advocacy-focused organizations.
Yes.
It's long-term. We're not measuring it in months. We're measuring it in years. And I always tell people, imagine if your job only paid you sometimes when they felt like it, when it worked. How would you be able to invest in buying a house or any of your own long-term projects? You wouldn't. Same thing
Yes.
goes for nonprofits. So monthly giving allows us that safety and security to invest in these long-term projects.
Love that. I'm a monthly donor to an organization right now, Chamber of Mothers, that focuses on bills, and it takes time.
But it's necessary.
Right. But it takes multiple visits. It takes trips to DC or to wherever the local bill is happening. It takes writing letters of testimony, like the non-sexy, exciting things often, but it's what it takes to get done. Paying for lawyers, like that's expensive. That takes a long time. So again, I love that. Okay. So sorry, third P.
The third P is actually two Ps. So it's political power. So it's actually technically the four Ps. So as an organization, what I would really focus on is imagine if I go up to a legislative power or decision maker and I say, we have 5 members. That doesn't make us feel legit or that the public supports us. When you're trying to push for change, you really need to show that like a lot of people are backing us up and support us. When we're thinking about votes, when we're thinking about decision makers wanting to push people in a certain direction or they want support from a large portion of people, we want to show that we have those people behind us. When I say we have 2,000 people and every member, we have to understand, it's like those negative and positive reviews. That one positive review is worth, I would say, 5 to 10 negative comments because it's so easy to complain. It's a lot harder for most people. Like they won't take the energy or the time to go out of the way to leave a positive review.
Yes.
So I believe that they're worth a lot more. So those 2,000 people that are donating every single month to our cause, that shows commitment. That shows that they care a lot more. So by joining as a member, you're giving us the political power we need to show that this is not just crazy cat ladies that are supporting this organization. It's you, Peter, who works for the dairy industry. It's you, Jeanette.
I love that. Yeah.
So that was where the kind of the messaging that I use, that it pushed people to feel like I should take action because it's true. I do believe this needs to change. I do understand that this takes years, and I do want to give my voice to the movement.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love all of that. And I'm sure on the days when it was hard and there was no monthly gifts happening, and I'm sure there were times where it was really exciting when things were happening, but through that process, I'm sure it felt really draining. And I think in the current state of the world, lots of things can feel really draining and not as energizing and full of momentum. But that energy is, I think, what makes the biggest difference in successful fundraising and advocacy. In the work that you're doing now, what are your recommendations for the listeners right now who are like, this all sounds great, but I am feeling so depleted? How do I get myself re-energized to get my team re-energized, then get donors re-energized in fundraising for us? Like, do you have any suggestions?
Many, but number one is, for me, fundraising is not about the money. Like, of course it is. Like, we understand rationally that it is about fundraising. But the way I try to see it is that I'm getting people to invest in the future that they want to see. Instead of focusing on you're investing in us doing things.
Right.
It's no, we're giving you the opportunity to actually take action towards a world you want to see, especially when we feel sometimes that we don't make a difference, that as individuals, what we do doesn't matter, that we feel powerless. Shifting it to, we are allowing people to make a step towards the world they would like to see. I feel that's so empowering. And it allows people to feel like, okay, I can do something. So when we start shifting the mindset towards, it's an opportunity that I'm offering these people instead of like they're doing me a favor, I think it really allows us to change into like a begging for money towards a like, I'm empowering our communities to see something different around them. And I think that's a very important shift that we need to have.
Yes. I also like your earlier example of just like having fun with it. Yeah, having fun with it and celebrating the wins in your teams, like acknowledging, like you might say 3 monthly donors in a day, and to some people that's like nothing, and to some that's like, that's everything. Like if they've hit a plateau, and that's a really big deal. And it's like, I think sometimes it's so easy to just be like, oh, a monthly donor transaction. Like those are 3 individuals that made a decision of a significant commitment in their life and building, like you said, that relationship with them. And so I love that. I want to also, as we wrap up this conversation, you also have a podcast. We were talking about this a little bit before we started recording the Just Because podcast, which I think is so clever. Has there been one story? I just want to leave us on like a positive, uplifting note, one story that you've interviewed of somebody recently on your show that's really stuck with you that listeners can learn from.
Yes, and it doesn't have anything to do with monthly donors, but it's such an inspiring story. One of my favorite, the Just Because podcast is really focused on how all of these causes are interconnected. Because I hear some people being like, yeah, well, our cause is less sexy, or like people don't want us, but they want to support children. And we work with, previously incarcerated people. Like no one likes our cause. And I'm like, first of all, stop saying that. There are definitely your people. You just need to find your people. But what I loved about so this is with Kathy Powelson of Pause for Hope. She's in BC in Canada. What she built is she really started working with other organizations to build partnerships. So she's a animal rescue, but that doesn't have a physical location. She just focuses on foster families. And what she's done is create these partnerships with women's shelters, recovery centers, rehab centers. So a lot of abandonments are not because people don't care about their animals. It's because of external circumstances that make it so that they can't take care of their animals. And generally it's for a specific amount of time, but there's no option for them except for paying a babysitter. And I have to go to Canada and I have to get my dog babysat for 10 days. And it's costing me close to $500, like for 10 days. Imagine if we're talking about 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. Like most people cannot afford that. So their only option is either to not go to recovery, not sign into rehab, stay with their abusive husband because they're scared of their animal. People have a huge bond with their animals. It's so much important than we can even imagine.
Yeah, of course.
So what she did is instead of just having these animals be abandoned, is her foster families are temporary homes for these people that are going through difficult times. So it lowers abandonments.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And what's even more amazing is from a fundraising perspective, now she can say, not only are we helping these animals, we're also helping these women going through domestic abuse.
Oh my gosh.
So I love the conversation because it really also kind of removed the crazy cat lady mentality from animal rescues as like, we don't care about humans. And no, we do care about families, including animals, not just people. So it's more of an and question instead of an or. So around partnerships, that was really important. I think everyone, if you want to talk about how can you really gain more people to be attracted to your cause, make connections with other causes as well.
Such a cool story. And I will say we have a 5-year-old Labradoodle, Malo, and he is a huge part of our family. I can't imagine life without him around. And so love all of the animal organizations out there doing things. Katherine, this has been incredible. Oh, she just lifted up her little doggy for listeners.
Mr. Pickles.
Mr. Pickles.
Mr. Pickles.
I love it. Katherine, where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you? Where can they work with you?
LinkedIn. I know you're a huge fan of LinkedIn, as am I. It has changed everything about how I interact with people around the world. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. The easiest way to connect with me is to message me on LinkedIn. I'm much more likely to respond than an email. If not, my website. So it's justbecause.consulting. Very simple. And the podcast, you can also find it at justbecause.consulting/podcast, or just search it on Spotify or whatever to find the Just Because podcast.
Amazing. Thank you for being here and for sharing all of this and for doing all of that hard work for so long and being out there. That was incredible. I'm sure people are going to want to pick your brains. And thank you again for being on Missions to Movements.
Thank you for having me. It was really awesome.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Missions to Movements. If you enjoyed our conversation and found it helpful, I would love for you to take a moment to leave a review wherever you're listening. Your feedback helps us reach more change makers like you and continue bringing impactful stories and strategies to the show. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button too, so you'll never miss an episode. And until next time, keep turning your mission into a movement. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope it was helpful and valuable to you. And I wanted to let you know my signature program, the Monthly Giving Mastermind, applications are open for the 6th round that will start in July. If you are someone that wants to increase your monthly recurring donations, but just have not had the time, the bandwidth, the people around you to do it, this is the opportunity. You can head to positiveequation.com/mastermind to learn all the details. I have a video that breaks it down. I showcase what we're going over every month. It essentially takes the 5-step framework that I teach in my book and puts it into practice that we do for you. So head to positiveequation.com/mastermind to learn more and apply.